You want to find your tribe of raving fans. I'm going to help you do it. This is the Digging Deep podcast with 360 Media, where we help you do better business. Hey everybody, this is Justin Lamb, and you're watching episode 21 of Digging Deep, where we help business owners build better businesses. Today I am joined by a wonderful individual I met a little bit over a decade ago. At the time, we were both working out of a gym. I had a kinesiology practice, and building the photography end of our business at the time to a point where it was sustainable and that I felt comfortable with jumping. And at that time, I had a wonderful opportunity to meet a martial artist who was also on the career path of being a financial planner. And, he was starting out in his practice and now has become a very successful individual owning Westlife Financial Services, the financial sensei, Alireza Fadaie. Alireza, I'm going to call you Ali from this point on, but
Yep, go for it,
thank
buddy.
you so much for joining me today
No
here on this
problem.
show.
Pleasure.
So it's been over a decade, and we were talking just before the show started to be recorded. Um, what was that journey like? I mean, you started your career in probably one of the worst times for a financial advisor to start their career, which was in the economic downturn of about 2008. So maybe you can guide me through of, what were you, what happened? Like why did you get into financial advising, and of course the thing that happened in the economy.
Absolutely. First of all, pleasure to have this chat with you, Justin. As you said, it's been 10 years, and we both have come a long way. I was working in the financial industry before becoming a financial advisor. So I worked for major banks. I started as a teller, and then I was a personal banker. And it was 2000, late 2007, early 2008 that I was working at a credit union, which I'm not going to name if you don't mind. And I just made the decision that what, I'm not a good employee. I just can't be an employee. I like the financial services industry. I just didn't want to be an employee. And I hear this from a lot of people that, hey, I don't know, left the security of being an employee. For me, with the income that I had as a personal banker, which was like $2,500 a month, net income, there was not much security anyways. So it was an easier decision. And I was like, okay, you know what, I can make $2,500 on my own, which I couldn't for some time actually. So it was a very humbling experience. um, so I left the credit union and started working with one of the major firms. uh, and 2008, March 2008, I started with them. So I got my insurance license as well. I had the mutual funds license, and um, then started the recession, the biggest economic downturn of our time, the Great Recession of 2008. So imagine being on 100% commission, and in the worst possible time. So it was very challenging. And the good thing is, I talked to my directors at the time, and I was like, hey, this is what I want to do, but I just need something else to keep my head above water. So there is a process. It has to be approved, because in financial industry we are very regulated industry. So they just wanted to make sure there would be no conflict of interest or anything, so I could teach martial arts on obviously part-time basis. So I met the owners of the club that we both worked at, and they are still my friends. Nothing but good experience from them, with them. So I had my karate class and I had my kickboxing class, and I was really trying to do both because these are the only passions and these are the only things that I know. It's personal finance and martial arts. And I was really trying to do both at the same time, which is basically running two completely different businesses. And it reached to the point that I just had to pick one over the other. The other one could is still a hobby. I still teach for as a hobby, but I don't look at it as a business. So yeah, and the other reason I was doing martial arts was, it was really hard for me to build a practice from scratch, especially in that difficult time. So I needed something that I enjoyed doing and I knew I was good at to keep the spirit up, basically. So going forward in 2012, I was number one in insurance in the Greater Vancouver North region, same as 2014. And I wanted to become a division director at the company, which and it was all, I couldn't make it happen. And in 2017, Justin, it reached to the point that I was like, okay, because working with a big company under the umbrella of a big company, it's got its pros and cons. One of the cons is everything has to go through their um, marketing department. It has to get
Has to go
approved
through
through the.
compliance. Yeah.
You got it, buddy. You got it. And it's definitely more difficult to do some kind of personal branding. And with all due respect, I've never been a company man, and I don't want to be a company man. I'm very like, I really work really well on my own. Call it a lone wolf, call it whatever you like it. So in 2017, um, I started looking around that, hey, if I want to become independent, how's it going to work? And for many, many years, many people working in the company are like, okay, you know what? So if imagine there is a door and pretty much everybody tells you, hey, there is nothing much going on. It's not going to be that much different, or the grass is not going to be greener somewhere else. And for whatever reason, you're busy and you get comfortable in the company and all that, and you're like, okay, so why would I open that door? And but it's 2017, it's reached to the point that, what, I think, let's figure it out for myself. So I started, talking to, some, we call the managing general agency, which in their contract they are like, you know what, you don't mention our name anywhere, right? You're basically, we're your back office, you're the business owner, you know, that's the only affiliation we have. And I was like, okay, you know what, perfect. And I should tell you, Justin, the compensation uh, incentive was definitely a huge part of it, for sure. Working as an independent, obviously, I have all the experience which I got from the previous firm, and it was just time to move on, go on my own. And it's been one of the best decisions I've made uh, in my life, in any way, financially, everything. But looking back, I'm glad I had the opportunity to start working with a big firm initially. I learned a lot, for sure. Um,
Well,
but
that's
on the other
amazing.
hand, absolutely. On the other hand, it was just time to, leave the company in good faith, keep the relationships. There is absolutely no reason to to burn the bridges. They were not mean to me. They didn't do anything bad to me. It's just a, business decision that I made,
Hmm.
which was, I thought it's time, and it was, and I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that story has a lot to unpack. So why don't we wind it back a little bit? So
Sure.
um, let's talk about running two things in tandem. And when you're starting out, I think there are a lot of people who are in this entrepreneur space, and especially now more so than ever, everybody's starting something new. They're
Yes.
getting into the idea of building a business or doing something that they're deeply passionate about. And of course, we know when you're starting out and you're trying to build something, money doesn't come necessarily easy. And as
True.
you alluded, it
Yep.
was a humbling experience when you discovered
Absolutely.
making 2,500 bucks with, which should be easy, but then you kind of run into that wall and go, oh, okay, maybe it's not as easy as it thinks.
True.
What type of things or what uh, things motivate you during that time and kept you going, where you could have easily said, you know what, this is too hard, I'm just going to go back and work for the man for the time being.
Great question, Justin. And that was the exact reason that kept me motivated, because I was like, when I left the credit union, the last employment position that I had, I came out, and you're like, okay, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna stay in the financial industry? And becoming a certified general accountant was a route, was a path that I was looking at, or becoming a personal trainer. And I was a little bit lost, for a short time. And there were offers on the table, to stay a personal banker with another major credit union and one of the biggest banks that I used to work at. And I obviously had a good history. And they were like, okay, you started as a teller, you can come back as a personal banker now because you got the license and experience and everything. But I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is going to be a lateral move. What I'm not happy with is being an employee. And I say this with all the respect in the world for people who are working for a certain organization, or for a certain company. I tell you confidently, working with many, many people over the years, this self employed or business owner uh, title is something a lot of people carry. And I tell you this, a lot of business owners, they should not be business owners in the first place, or they are broke. The business is broke. And you look at the hours they put in and what they make. Some of them, I don't know if they even make minimum wage. And for some people, is just, I'm just sick of seeing people acting like, fake it to make it. You know, uh, a lot of employees, they're happy, they're working for a good company, they're working for a good organization. And a lot of employees that I know, they make more than the self-employed or the business owners. So I hate to give this message that there is something wrong with being an employee. Absolutely not. It was just not a right fit for me. And to be honest, if I had a good job and I was happy with my work environment, I probably would have stayed still. I don't know. I don't know. But reality is, somewhere in my mind, and part of it is, um, I just don't like. I'm just one of those people. I don't like being told what to do. It's
Yeah,
just
and
part
I
of the personality.
and I feel like entrepreneurship is, as you alluded to, it is not for everybody, and
No.
there's certain characteristics that an entrepreneur exhibits. And although people, I think, glorify the entrepreneur, I mean,
Yes.
you and I were both entrepreneurs before it
Yep.
was popular. Um, you know,
Absolutely.
I mean, by the time that I had met you, I had already run the rehab clinic for almost 8 years at
Wow.
that time.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and for me, it was looking at other people who were personal trainers or other things, and they were working on a commission basis alone. And they would squawk and wonder, why I would be doing so much better than they were. But I also chose a different route. Like, I
Mm.
rather work and pay a rent to the organization and then just go and conduct my business. Whereas most of them have that scarcity mindset. Well, what if I don't make it? You know, it'd be better just to take a commission off of everything, and then they squawk because they're not bringing in enough people, and they just put it on other things. But they didn't look at what it takes to build a business. And so, let's go to the hardships that you go
Yep,
through, and
absolutely.
maybe you can share some of the hard knocks that you had to take. And I know a lot of this stuff is personal. We try not to glorify, or we try not to tell people, because we feel that it colors how people perceive of us. But all of those bumps and obstacles that we hit, land us to where we are today. Did you
True.
have anything really either disastrous, or something that really knocked the chip or the wind out of you for a time being, in that entrepreneurship journey?
My early years, I would say really between 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. I'm talking about like, almost 4 years, Justin. There were times like, I still talk to my wife and I'm like, I don't know how I kept myself motivated. I really don't, you know, but I just never gave myself that option to go back. It was like, okay, I'm going to toughen up and I'm just going to go through it. And to add more things to that is, when my wife had moved from England, she couldn't do anything for a year, like, and so there was hardly any income. you know and when you initially start in financial, and a lot of people start with the raw market, people they know. I got almost $0 in revenue from people I knew for whatever reason. And it's one of those businesses which is really awkward, Justin, because you want to do financial planning, and you gotta get to know what is going on in people's personal financial life. And even a lot of you, like friends and family, they're not comfortable revealing that to you. you know um so man, I went to chamber of commerce meetings, meetups, networking events, you name it, cold calling, door to door. And with every no, it was like a blow to the ego, you know. But again, it was just, I don't know how many times I was okay. What is the other option? Going back to the bank? I'm not going to do that, you know. And I'm so glad in 2012, like, things started, turning around really well. And it was obviously because of all the seeds that I had planted over the years, right? And with any kind of business, Justin, you have to look at it long term. So my mindset was, I'm going to make this work because this is what I want to do, right? And it doesn't matter how long it's going to take, and if I have to make compromises in the meanwhile. And I totally appreciate for some people's situation, life situation, um, is not as easy. Like, I have, like, my wife was always supportive. She wanted me to do what I wanted to do. And but obviously we didn't have any luxury in our life. And at that time I didn't have my 7-year-old son. Like, we didn't have any child, so it was up to us, living a very modest life. Everything is obviously relative. But I just, and I think it was one of the things that my martial arts background really came into play. It was just keep going, you know toughen up, keep going, learn. If you're like, I stopped going to a lot of these networking events because I was just not getting anything out of it, right? I was at wrong places, you know and it's a relationship with, like most businesses, it's a relationship building business. And it's a matter, like, I still to this day, that I have a name for myself, and obviously I have a network and client base and everything. Like, some people have known me for like, 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden, they have done business with me recently. They were just not ready, or for whatever reason. You just got to give it time. But I totally understand. It's really hard to get it started. That's the hardest part. Once you got a client base and you got the, name recognition, in a community and everything, it gets easier. You just have to find somehow, to survive the early months and early years, because things are just going to get um, more easy, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean the journey is different for everybody in terms of their business, and some people find success right off the bat, and then
Hmm.
run into other
Hmm.
troubles. But there are a large majority of people who start off as entrepreneurs, and
Yep.
they're not able to make it, and they're you know struggling right off the get
Hmm.
go.
Hmm.
And what I get from your experience, and of course, sprinkling in my own experience, I have found that it's about the perseverance and knowing what the end goal is for you. What is it that really drives you? And that's, um, you know, not having to work for somebody in your case. And for me, freeing up freedom for down the road was my particular case. But having that deep set in your heart, and may not know everything else around it. In marketing we talk about what is your why and why do you want to do
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. And that's great and all, but the honest truth is as you're bootstrapping and you're just getting off the ground, the things that keep you in the game seem very superficial at the time, but they're a huge driving force, right? You don't want to be the minion to some other person, and that was huge for you, right? And for me, it's working day in and day out, for somebody, and having somebody else dictate my life was the driving motivation for me. I didn't want that. I wanted freedom, and I wanted to do things that I wanted to do with who I wanted to do when I wanted to do them. And because of that, I was willing to sacrifice and put in the hard time and effort in the beginning and persevere it. I mean, you know much like you, we went through really hard times as well, especially when you're juggling two businesses,
Hmm.
and one's transitioning out because of health reasons, and the other one is you know uh, sort of blossoming, and then has its own set of problems. And of course, in the financial state of where that puts you when you're liquidating one business and buying assets for another business, there's a
Yes.
there's a
Yep.
there's a crossover where money is really tight. um,
Absolutely.
and I mean, I remember days where getting a lunch or a meal was hard to come by, and thankfully I had friends who were able to support me during that time. uh, let's move on to 2014, 2015. I believe you wrote a book, um, and I think it's really interesting. you know when we first, in that time period, books were really a valuable commodity. Now, so I think it's a staple. Some of them might be digital, and then of course the paper. But what was the process like, and what drove you to want to write a book?
Absolutely. I've been writing for 20 something years now, Justin. So, um, and it's really interesting because, there are things that I tell my wife, and she's like, "Oh, really? Is it, did that happen that easily?" So I was never a writer until I was at grade 12, I would say. And, I had one of the teachers who was really encouraging for me to write. And I think I was 21, that I was really into, like, weight training and bodybuilding and fitness and all that stuff. And uh, I used to see these translation from people in the magazines about bodybuilding articles, which was very obvious the person who had done the translation did not really know much about the subject. So it's not just about, like, knowing the language. You got to have knowledge about the subject, because there are terms that you just cannot translate from English to Farsi or any other language. So I contacted one of these magazines and I was like, hey, I've translated an article which I had done it for the instructor at at my dad's gym. And I read the article myself, the translation. I was okay, this is not that bad. Maybe I should send it to you, to these guys. So I sent it to them, and that's how my writing, um, I don't know if I call it career. I really cannot call it career because it's never been, full time geek for me. But it was my student job back in Iran, actually. So I was a writer and translator for several magazines, martial arts magazines and fitness magazines. And so I've been published in 4 countries in English and Farsi, and I've written 300 articles so far. So writing has definitely been a passion. So back in 2013, I thought about writing a book. And I was like, oh, and it was part of my marketing as well. And I was okay, I know only 2 things is the personal finance and martial arts. So why don't I mix them up and write a book? Because obviously you can write a book, but you got to be different. So I got actually there are only 2 copies left from the previous edition. So I thought about, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, so what I'm going to do and what I did was I divided the chapters of the book like color belts of martial arts, starting from white belt, basics, yellow, blue, green, talking about savings and investments, the common mistakes people make, risk management, cash flow, debt management, and black belt. Okay, you put things together and you're gonna come up with a simple financial plan. Um, and I was okay. I was a little bit worried because I was like, okay, mixing martial arts and personal finance, is it something? Are people gonna laugh at it? But I still went ahead with it, and the book was received really well. I'm so glad. Uh, so I had all these ideas. This is how I function. I think about things for some time, and all of a sudden I sit down and do it. The typing part. So I had all these ideas in my mind for a long time. Uh, so back in 2013, I believe it was September time, my son was 6 months old at that time, and my wife wanted to visit her family in England, so they went away for 6 weeks. That's when I typed 90% of the book when they were not here. So 2014 it was released, and it was received really well. People I was worried about, okay, how are people gonna look at it, what a stupid idea, or what has martial arts got anything to do with personal finance, or this is cheesy crap or whatever. And it was far from it. People found it interesting, people found it fun, because which is that's what I always try to do. And I'm working on the 3rd edition at the moment. So the name of the book is Personal Finance Mastery: How to Get a Black Belt in Managing Your Money.
Amazing.
Thank
So
you.
it's interesting, having a book is still, I think, a really great lead gen, something that you can give to somebody and they can pass it on. And what I find interesting is nowadays with social media, a lot of people are hesitant about sharing, the things that they teach or that they do,
Yeah.
and in fear of scarcity, that you know um, if I teach you how to do financial mastery, that you'll never come and ask me. And I know what I think, and I know my own experience was. Can you share how that has translated for you when you share that knowledge? I would assume that it would go into some extensive detail on what they can do. Might not be ultra specific, because that
Mhm.
requires a tailor made solution. But I think for somebody who's going to read that, they should have a very good foothold about how to control and manage their finances. How did you find that personal fight about,
Yep.
do I share this, and what value does that leave me as a person who's selling that financial instrument?
Excellent question, Justin. So reality is, I'll look at photography, for example. Everybody has a camera, at least on their phone. Very few are professional photographers. We can read all these articles and videos and all that, and watch videos on YouTube about marketing and all that. There are people who do it as a profession. Same as personal finance, Justin. Reality is you can provide some general information in the book or in your videos, or the online course that I've started doing based on the content of my book. Reality is, at the end of the day, it's just a scratch on the surface. If people confuse information with professional advice, it's absolutely true. There is a lot of free information online. How's it gonna help you, and which one of them fits your situation? That's the job of a professional, right? So I got my book, which very interesting, Justin. Another reason I started my online course is, some people work read your book in detail. I've been surprised, in how much detail some people have read my book. Even they look at the testimonials, they remember the testimonials for whatever reason. But reality is, majority of people, they buy your book or they get your book as a gift and they never read it. And it's nothing personal. They haven't read a lot of books that they have bought already, right? So you're going to end up with people who, okay, there is information, they're not going to do anything with it. Or they get some general information and they're like, okay, wait a minute, how's it going to, um, how's it going to apply to my situation, right? Uh, and the purpose of the book was to provide some general knowledge for people. And at the end of the day, they would come to me for the personalized advice. So even without coming to me, they would be way better off, reading the book or taking my online course, providing with them with a lot of with a lot of knowledge. And here's another thing, Justin. Internet is great. One of the downsides, potential downsides, is it gives platform to everybody. So there is a lot of wrong information out there, a lot, right? So, and it's very interesting. Some of the people who have written a book about personal finance, some of the big shots, or you see them on TV, to my amazement, they have not worked a day as a professional financial planner. Seriously, I don't know how it's that going to work. You know, it's very different if I read some articles about, marketing. I cannot do your job because I've never done it hands on. I can go to college, BCIT, or a lot of these private, colleges, and learn about marketing, to pass the courses, get a diploma. I've never worked a day as a marketer. That's it. That's the thing. The experience is invaluable. You know, even in few, I would say, minutes, sitting down with a couple, I know what's going on in their personal finances just by talking very generally to them. And I am no genius or psychologist or whatever whatsoever. It's just come with the years of experience of working with people from all walks of life. People, having, negative net worth in their 60s, and people who are millionaires, right? So, and these are the things that what I want to really clarify to people thinking about being, an entrepreneur, which is, as you said really well, it's like, the cool is like, the cool thing for a lot of, young people now. And I hear it everywhere. I hear it, very often. Oh, don't go to school, don't go to university. It's all crap. Just become a business owner. And I tell you this, okay, you want to become a business owner. Imagine yourself as a business owner. Now you want to find one single client. Go do it. See how hard it is in this very busy, crowded, noisy space of social media and anything else. How are you going to differentiate yourself? Forget about what you read in the marketing books. Or you got to differentiate yourself. You're going to find your niche. Okay, in real world, in practicality, how are you going to do it, right? And people are like, they're going to be like, okay, wait a minute, it's not as easy as it looks. And that's exactly why, Justin, a lot of people just don't make it. They quit even after, like, very few months. They're like, whoa, wait a minute, okay, this is, I just can't do it, right? And as you said, we did it, way before there was Instagram and people, I don't know, taking picture in a luxury house or in front of a, luxury car. These are the things that, man, I just have zero tolerance for it, to be to be quite honest with you. And hey, um, if that's your goal, fine. If you really have those things, okay, great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I just can't stand people, the fake it to make it people, who look down at others, actually, which they have this facade of being what they, equal, success with, being, having money. And in reality is, the reality is something else.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I find that I mean, fake it till make it has always been a mantra, long before Instagram. I mean, social media, as many people, many pundits talk about, is an exposition of what is already happening, but behind the scenes. Now it's just
Yeah.
brought to the forefront, right?
Yeah.
We've always been vain. We've always wanted to chase after the riches and whatnot. It's just that social media has now allowed us to do that and personify, what has already been there. And you're absolutely right in the sense that um, to put out all of your content, in a fashion where people can consume it, there is a level of which specificity needs to take over for you to really take a deep effect into, whatever it is you do. So whether it's financial planning or whether it's marketing,
Mhm.
you know we we have so much information on the internet. We have, you know all different viewpoints, some right, some wrong, some, indifferent, and unless you're programmed or understand what questions to ask, you can really get lost in that whole thing. And I think what people need to realize is, rather than being scarce about your knowledge, use this opportunity to show people why you're knowledgeable and why they should see you, and give them, without reasonable doubt, that you know you're the one that they should be talking to because you're the specialist in the space. And so I think what it does is it helps actually improve the onboarding process, if you could agree.
Mhm.
When a person, say,
Absolutely.
reads your book, has a better understanding, at least when you have the conversation, you can have an intellectual conversation about it, rather than having to start from scratch and saying, oh, I've got to take you through white belt. and then I got to take you through all the other different levels to get you to a point where we can actually make something happen. Having that information in their hands early on is a great way for them to just get up to speed. Reduces your onboarding process, which is the time suck and the money suck out of our business, right? It's the prep time to get them to a place where we can actually make a difference in their life.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Justin. And one thing about, doing the marketing and videos and all that, and, writing a book, because, like, you know what? Writing is something many people are not comfortable with. They just can't do it. Or I just had this conversation with one lady just yesterday. She's not comfortable with social media or doing videos and doing all those things at all. You know what? If it's not your thing, find a different avenue for doing your marketing. But if people, as you said, they're so scared of, and usually it's scared of being judged by other people. Uh, I think I think part of the reason I don't I just put videos out there and really don't care about what people think, and I rarely get mean comments on my posts. Very rarely, like it's been very few. I think it's because of my age that I know, like, a healthy human being doesn't go out there and try to uh, I don't know, post negative comments or shoot negativity at other people and ruin their post or whatever. They just don't do that. So if somebody does that, um, he or she is just not a very positive person and worth thinking about. To be honest, their judgment doesn't really matter. At least that's how I look at it. Easier said than done, especially for people who are younger. Uh, but it's just a part of the maturity and part of growing up that you just have to, hey, no matter what you do, you reach to the point in your life, and the sooner you get to that point, the happier life you're going to have. Is some people are going to like you, some people like you, some people don't. No matter what you do, no matter who you are. Some people look at you confident, some people look at you cocky. Some people look at you as kind, some people look at you as weak. You can, and it's these are like, the moments and aha moments that you just internalize these um, things that happen in your life, and you've obviously heard about it before, that hey, you cannot be everything to everybody and not everybody's going to like you. But you just feel that, okay, it is true, and I just have to move on with my life. It's the same with any business. You just have to pick the niche, whatever we call it, to give you a perfect, and finding your niche doesn't have to be that complicated. Usually, especially if it's like, personal service, usually your network of people are people around your age and pretty much same socioeconomic uh,
Position.
position, as you will. And you got something, you got some common interest. For me is martial arts, and I can talk days about martial arts and sports and soccer, for example. And that's just in a lot of businesses, Justin, people want to feel they can like you and trust you first, right? As a professional, as a true professional, you already know most than many people, right? You already know more than most people. So it's, the likability and trustability is something that you cannot fake it, or you know uh, try to convince people to do that. Is
Hmm.
they just either do they or they don't, and that's fine. You just have to move on to the next person.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. And got to be cognizant of time, because the show doesn't go too long. And I'm sure we could talk days for this, and we might
I
have to
know.
come and revisit this. But I'll touch on one last thing as we went, as you kind of touched on it. And when a person talks about niching, I think a lot of people have a misconception of what niching is. A lot of people take their time to niche in a particular product and or service, but a niche is not necessarily related to the individual product or service that you offer. And as you kind of touched on it, a niche can also be a specific market that you're after. So those people who resonate with martial arts, people in a certain age demographic, people in certain social economic situations, those are all niches just the same. And so what I find funny is that there are people who maybe promote themselves as generalists, a jack of all trades, does a lot of different things, and that they say that they don't really niche. And if you look really carefully, I think a lot of people will realize that they actually do, in fact, niche. That there is a certain tribe. My mantra is it's not about the product or service that you offer, but more so your niche is the tribe that you decide to uh, project and attract into your ecosystem. And so I think it's really interesting that you touched on that sort of laterally, but in a marketing sense, I think it's a lot of misconception that you have to be, specifically a financial planner for people at this particular age demographic, because some people feel like it's about money, and some people feel like they're going to have the highest rate of return. But if it's not the people that you generally resonate with and the people that you can't talk for hours on, maybe the niche is a little bit more refined than that. Maybe there are people who believe in martial arts or sporting and discipline, versus people who might love wine and culture, and those can still be sub niches. So it is really interesting, to dive down in that particular avenue, and I thought I'd share that. Now, for cognizant of time here, I always ask my guests one piece of resource that has helped you in your journey as an entrepreneur, whether it be a book, a website, something that
Mhm.
you've encountered that has had a dramatic impact in your career. Do you have anything that has really helped you turn the tide?
Great question. um I like Gary V. I think a lot of people do. um and he's all about, you know being you. And because at the end of the day, you know it's all about, like, people connecting to people. And as I said, being liked and, trustable, which it doesn't come that quick. You gotta really give it time. Just like any kind of relationship, you cannot push it. um Everybody has heard of Tony Robbins. It's just one thing, Justin. You know a lot of things already. It's a matter of applying the things that you know. And it's so easy because, when things turn negative, it's really easy to forget about all those things, right? All the videos that you've seen and all the books that you have read. You just There are things. Life is not always pleasant, and trust me, we live in one of the most wealthy countries of the world. You can, if you want to have some perspective in life, look what people go through every single day. They dream of one day of, living like, like us in Canada. That gives you some perspective to go through tough times. you know um any particular book, a particular people that many people have heard of, Gary Vaynerchuk, you know um Tony Robbins. And there are people in the coaches in the financial industry that, some people may not have heard of. But I think the most one thing that has kept me in the business and you mentioned it, and I'm 100% sure you've gone through it. There is absolutely no way you can go through, tough times without the perseverance, which again, easier said than done. I know that, right? You just have to. Here's what what kept me in the, in the business, Justin. I never gave myself an option to fail. It was just not an option for me. I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to make it happen, right? I never looked at, okay, I'm just going to give it a try for a year. Let's see what happens. I've always like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to be successful. And, it's good to be competitive. You look at the other people, and you're like, okay, he's done it. I can do it too. Right. So yeah, I know,
Fantastic.
again,
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me
easier
today.
said than done. No problem, my friend.
For those people who would like to learn more about you and your services, and what it is that you offer in the world, how can people reach you?
Absolutely. So the website for my company is called, the domain name is, the website address is westlifefinancial.ca. And I do have my own, financial sensei page, which is financialsensei.ca, and also financialsensei.com. And I'm pretty sure you're going to tag my name in the post. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, pretty active in social media, so would be more than happy to help.
Fantastic. And for all those people listening, if you guys found value in this podcast, please make sure that you leave some comments, some feedbacks to help me improve the show. And again, thank you for giving me your ears and helping us share the information to help another business person do better business. Until our next episode, I hope you guys all have a great day. And thank you, Ali, for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Justin. Great to meet you over Zoom after a long time. And also, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Amazing.